All right, let's go. We got a couple folks here. We don't have a quorum. I want to go ahead and give you an update. Since you all took the time to come, the information is available in the packet. We won't be able to approve minutes or take any actions from the committee without a quorum, but at least, Edwin, you can sit wherever you want. We won't hold it against you. Yeah, if everybody wants to sit in the middle. There are just big picture wise, we've allocated or appropriated towards projects about 3/4 of the LOST anticipated funds over the 5 years. We have about 10 million, a little over 10 million left. So that's a little more than a quarter, I guess. Jane will tell you that the revenues are a little bit behind.
Well, as of last week they were, but I checked this morning and we're actually ahead by about $500,000. And what's especially noteworthy about this is, had I budgeted our lost dollars at 100%, we are still ahead. Well, I budget our lost dollars that we expect at 95%. Had I budgeted them at 100%, we would be 200,000 ahead, which is really remarkable. So that's some really great news for us.
So we're basing our program off of those projections. So monitoring as it actually comes in helps us. Doug, we might have another 200,000. I just heard Jane so you're at 1.5 million. The issues we're going to be faced with this year are, and why Major Bringman is here is the sheriff's request for cars will exceed the amount of funding available. We have about 1.3 million left allocated to the sheriff, and Major Bringman, if you want to go ahead and just give an update. While you're here, you came over, you might as well talk to the committee, just what you think you need for next year and what that will cost.
We're covering close to like 30 schools. Even though we're putting more people into the schools to do security at the schools, the vehicles that they're using right now are the oldest vehicles that we have, and we're moving them back into the SRO program. But next year we were slated at about 43 cars. I have to up that to about 65 cars to be able to backfill what I've stripped off the road to put back into the schools. Like I told Dan, by about the second or third week of January, my spare car count for the entire agency is going to be 3 cars. Everything else I've allocated to either schools, to trainees that are coming out. Even with the cars I've ordered this year, which will arrive somewhere around the middle of January, when we start building them, they should start coming out towards the end of January, beginning of February. That's going to make a small difference and give us some breathing room, but I'm just running out of cars. I'm running out of spare cars because we're hiring more and more people. We're putting more people into the schools. So the catch-up game has gotten even bigger for us.
So in the last 2 years, we've purchased 90 patrol cars with the local option sales tax, plus some additional vehicles. It's about a little over 100 total vehicles for the Sheriff's Department. But because of that expansion that Major Bringman just mentioned, we're beyond what we have in the program by about half, or double, I guess I should say. We need twice as much as we have in that particular bucket. And there's not, just a reminder, all of the unallocated funding that was set aside when we started this was allocated between drainage and the Sheriff's Department last year. So there is no unallocated funding to dip into this year. So that will be an issue that as we go forward, meeting throughout the year and developing the budget for the next year, that'll be something we have to address. And we discussed maybe municipal leasing as an option that we could bring and consider I think that's allowable under the local option sales tax. I'll confirm that with the attorney, but that may be a way to bridge the gap for some period of time. But the other one, I can't see the rank here. Lieutenant?
No, Battalion
Chief.
Before we
Oh, okay.
Just comment more than a question, and thanks for coming, Major. Share a little personal experience with the committee. When Major Brinkman talks about 3 spares, we have 5 districts in the county for the sheriff's office, and I'm 1 deputy in 1 district. And my assigned patrol car was in the shop for about 6 weeks, which put me in a spare. And then about 2 weeks into that spare had to go into the shop, which put me in another spare, which about 2 weeks later had to go into the shop. So if we get to the point where we've got 200 plus sworn deputies on the road and 3 spares, and 1 guy went through 4 cars in about 6 weeks, I mean, that's, you know, we've kind of reached a critical point. I understand we can't rob Peter to pay Paul as it, you know, as it pertains to the remaining local option sales tax dollars, but we got to do what we can as a committee to try and help the sheriff's office tackle this problem.
Thank you. Has somebody looked into Tony's driving, perhaps?
I didn't wreck them.
Oh, you didn't wreck him?
He does pretty good. I think it's not wrecks, it's just mechanical things.
No, I was teasing.
Oh, we have like accident review boards fairly regular. His name hasn't come across my desk yet.
That's surprising.
Have you ridden behind me?
I have when you're in a civilian car, so I don't even tend to imagine what it's like when you're in a patrol car. So I'm clear, Dan or Major, you're about 22 cars short? Is that of this? You said you anticipated 43 and you need 65. Was that the right number?
For October of next year.
Okay.
For 2019. Into 2020, the original was 43 cars. It would have to be increased to about 65. And like I talked to Dan about, I'm really, you know, I want to sit down with some companies and look into municipal leasing to try to get ahead of the problem and not, you know, increase what the amount of money that we have to use. It should be possible, but, you know, it's still in the stages of talking to all the companies about it.
So of these 22, what does one cost? Or is it, they vary all over the place?
Roughly about 39,000.
So
If
you're
it's
about,
if it's a fully marked car, like a patrol car you see on the road with a cage, push bumpers, all the equipment that goes with it, radios, and those things are not getting any cheaper, those radios. I mean, a portable like this is like $4,000.
so you're 850,000 or so short?
It should be roughly around 2.4 million, I think, is what we would need.
Well, I think the cars are a part of it. Every year, you can see we've also funded additional sheriff's equipment beyond, actually, I didn't include that in your backup, but beyond the cars, the last 2 years, we've funded additional sheriff's capital equipment to about $700,000 or $800,000. So the cars is a piece of that.
Okay.
And then the additional other capital equipment
All right.
would add to that.
Okay, thank you for the clarifications. Anybody else have any questions?
I just have a comment. How much of what's the percentage of funding for the sheriff's office now from LOST? Do we have a ballpark on it exact?
I can find it. Let me
Yeah,
find
I'll
it.
look that up. And I have a tendency to, you know, help the sheriff's department get to the minimum amount that you can get by with, maybe through municipal leasing and all. I think we've made a commitment early on, and I prefer to see us stay as close to that commitment we can, and other sometimes unforeseen things that you got to deal with. And we certainly need to make allowances for that. One of the areas where we might be able to is if our funding comes in above anticipated levels. The Supreme Court passed that rule where there's sales taxes now to be collected on internet sales. So Shane and I was speaking about it. We don't know how much that's going to bump us or not, but I would lean more towards looking at some, if we come in above revenue source on the LOST, I would look forward to possibly using some of those unanticipated revenues, and we keep an eye on that. What is your timeline on the needs for these vehicles?
We have some arriving, like I said, in January, but that's out of this year's budget. It truly depends on, what the state of the fleet is after I put these 46 cars that we're getting into play. We still have a lot of older cars running, and I try to use them in the school resource program, but then when comes summertime, I put these SROs on the streets. They don't take the whole summer off. They have to work just like everybody else. Some of them work beach patrol, some of them work in the district. So then we have these older cars that are fine to drive back and forth to schools that are now on patrol. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that we make it through the summer without me having 10 or 15 cars go down. We're patching things as good as we can. It's not an ideal situation, but we do the best with what we got. And, Dan has always stepped up to the plate and helped us out, and so has the committee here. I will look into other options as far as municipal leasing goes that might help us bridge that gap, like I told Dan. The school board was gracious enough when they sat down with us, and Dan was there for that meeting, to where they basically pay the salaries for the school deputies 100% of the time, the entire salary. So that helped us a lot and helped the county a lot. We have to come up with their equipment. That was part of the agreement, that the schools would not have to absorb the equipment.
Now, I understand, and I don't have a problem with that. I think we need to do what we can, but I'm sure we know of a few other unanticipated expenses also, not just the sheriff's department. And so, we got to look at that and weigh all that out together and decide, how much we're going to allocate out of the unused portions. So so you're saying your timeline is sometime probably after the summer of next year?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, good.
And I totally understand that everybody in the county has needs, the fire department, and we work with these guys all the time. They work with us. And we understand that everybody has needs and everybody presents their case. It's an imperfect world, and we're trying to do the best we can with what we have.
Yeah, just like we do at home,
Yes,
but,
sir. Absolutely.
But I think it was very prudent in us keeping a certain amount of the money back and not committing it for unanticipated things. So this is certainly one of those categories, but it ain't the only one.
And I'll get a municipal leasing thing together, a presentation together, and I'll get it to Dan and Jane, and they can look into it and see if that's something that would be beneficial to us as far as the local option sales tax. And I believe last year they checked with the lawyer and they said it was an option, but if you want to double check, I'll get everything ready and I'll get it to you.
Okay. I think, Edwin, we've allocated all of the unallocated funding in the last year to the various big drainage projects and to the sheriff's department for additional cars. Out of the total LOST program, just for the sheriff's department, it's about 15.5%. For public safety, we're at 29%, but that includes the fire departments, as Major Brinkman mentioned, as well as the 911 system that all of our emergency responders use throughout the county is funded through that.
Thank you. Anything else? All right.
I think it's just an awareness. I think you all are ahead of the other folks who skipped today to know that this is an issue we're going to be discussing. And I think looking at other solutions that we haven't considered before in the county is the right thing to do at this point in time. From Holly Navarre? Yeah. This is another request that you need to be aware of that's coming. It's a change. It's no different money, but it's just a change in the purpose. So I'll turn it over to you, Chief.
Good morning. My name is Howie Rounds, Battalion Chief of the Holland Navarre Fire District. I'm here speaking on behalf of Chief Ron Norton. He's out of town. I think next year's money, we're allocated $45,000 for a boat. We tried with a regional grant with the South End departments to get air packs. Navarre Beach has MSAs. Myself and Midway have Scots. Our air packs go out of service at the end of this year. Our bottles do. So what we did is we went in with the regional grant with all three departments and got turned down. what the Holland Navarre Fire District is asking for is you give us year 4 money for year 3 to allow us to go ahead and purchase air packs needed for my guys.
So it's $45,000. It's already in the program. It's in this number that's in your backup for the fire departments in fiscal year 20. But the need is immediate for the self-contained breathing apparatuses to be replaced this year. We have an agreement from a vendor to provide them as needed, but needed a recommendation, I guess. It won't be a formal recommendation, but any thoughts or concerns you have, we'll have this on the agenda for the Board of County Commissioners. I'll let them know that there was not a quorum and it's not an official recommendation, but I think it's worth you all discussing and giving me any feedback. But to me, it's a request from the fire department. They're not asking for any additional money. It's just repurposing the money for the immediate need that they have.
Any comments? My question would be to Jane. I presume you can do the financial gymnastics to get that done. I mean, it seems to me to be a no-brainer.
Yeah, I don't have a problem reallocating it to year 3.
Just real quick before we move on from public safety, as we start to talk about another local option sales tax, possibly a full penny, 10-year local option sales tax, my personal concern is that a 29% allocation to public safety is not going to sit well with the voters. When some of us worked independently to help get this first local option sales tax passed, public safety was top priority. And I'm concerned that 29% is not going to sit well with voters. Just want to throw that out there.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions? All right, so, I mean, is it just a straw poll or something you want to take?
I'll present it to the board as a recommendation of the committee members that were present, as opposed to a recommendation of the committee.
I don't think so.
What are you wanting a recommendation on?
That, to make the change that Chief requested.
Yeah, I'm good with that, if everybody else is.
Okay.
I don't believe there's any opposition.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
You can take a look at the project list, the report that staff put together on the projects that are completed, and then the project list. I've included both fiscal year 20 and 21, and that's the remainder of the local option sales tax program is reflected there in that. I think Tony mentioned it's been discussed in several forums about the additional half-cent that is available that would have to go to a referendum. I think there's some level of interest in the Board of County Commissioners in pursuing that prior to this half-cent expiring. And I think there's a need for it. From a public safety perspective, we've seen the sheriff's capital requests for the last 2 years, and if you look at his planning for the next 3 years, it's on average about $2.5 to $3 million in public safety capital just for the sheriff's department. The fire departments have capital needs beyond what is included in the current program. They've got $1.5 million in this program, but the fire departments, both the special districts and the MSBU districts, have additional needs to increase and enhance and improve public safety. I don't have a figure to put on that, but I know it's there. The jail needs to be expanded. The Board of County Commissioners approved an interim solution to convert the DJJ building out at the Sheriff's Department for inmate capacity, but that only solves it for a couple of years probably. And that's a $25 to $30 million project to expand the jail. There's not money in the budget to do that without a sales tax. In addition to public safety, we hear regularly about transportation and drainage, roads, road capacity, and not, we hear about Highway 90 and 98, which is a state FDOT issue, but we also hear about Woodbine, we hear about East Bay, we hear about Chumuckla, we hear about four-laning of 87. Again, I guess that's a state issue, but there are many needs in the transportation and drainage bucket, if you will. Widening of Woodbine, last estimate was in the neighborhood of $28 to $30 million. I can tell you that doesn't happen within our current budget by any stretch of the imagination. So I think there's needs, and then you've seen, if you've followed any of the Benny Russell Park improvement discussion, the discussions we've been having with the YMCA. Their executive director was here last week to give a presentation on expanding YMCA services in the county beyond where they're currently located in Navarre, to include Pace, to include East Milton, perhaps, providing some programming at our East Milton facilities, and also in Gulf Breeze. That would be a large capital investment from the county, I think, up front, with the Y under a comprehensive management agreement, assuming the operations and maintenance tail of that for the next 25 years. But that would be a project that could be funded with an additional half-cent sales tax, or by changing the current to 1 cent and extending it to 10 years. So I think you'll hear more about that as the board discusses it over the next 3 to 6 months, and we'll see where we go. But if I think there's reason for it, I think there's projects that need to be done that the citizens support. It's just a matter if that translates to support at the ballot box.
Right. Dan, if that were to take place as you described it, what kind of revenue would that generate over a 10-year period? Have y'all got some projections on that?
It's roughly $160 million. We're seeing about $8 million out of the half cent annually, a little bit less. So $16 million a year for 10 years.
Okay. All right. Does anybody have any questions on that?
Dan, what is the, I'm not sure, I may not be looking at this correctly, of the total dollars, you may have off the top of your head, the total dollars that we've spent so far, how much of that has been matching dollars from another source? I may not be asking the question correct, but I mean, we've spent $10 million of LOST funds, and how many dollars in matching grants or whatever?
Yeah, I did not specifically update that for the update. I'll get that number and provide it to you. Those projects are primarily our HMGP projects. Pace-Patterson Lane, which is completed. There's some additional work going on there after the Tropical Storm Gordon rain. Not in the basin where we made the improvement, but just north of that, up towards 90, there was some flooding on Pace Lane that the engineers are looking at, the engineering firm and the construction contractors, and we think we can make some changes to that project to improve even beyond the scope that it was originally looked at, the drainage basin that it originally looked at. So Pace-Patterson is one. Chipper Maranatha is another one that's going on now. Settlers Colony is a big one. That's almost $7 million project with $1.3 million in LOST. So I'll run those numbers. I don't think they've changed much from what we've talked about previously, but I'll update those.
The projects we can get from most of the matching grant funds are coming for projects that are drainage, transportation related. We don't get many matching grants from other issues. Okay.
In some cases, parks, we're looking at matching grants. Commissioner Lynchard and Commissioner Salter, both, we are waiting. Actually, I think Commissioner Salter's grant came through for Fidelis Park, a land and water conservation grant that's $200,000 with $200,000 in matching. So we've doubled our money with that one. And Commissioner Lynchard's applying, the county is applying, it's Commissioner Lynch's district, for a grant for Swenson Park, and it's a similar grant. It's 50/50. So in the parks realm, we do see that ability to use local option sales tax dollars to match grant dollars and increase the availability of money.
I tend to lean towards really ramping up those projects because we can get the matching dollars. We've got a big deficiency there that's existed for many years because we haven't had this revenue source available to do these types of projects. So my inclination is going to be to try to get caught up to a certain level where our backlog is not quite as far behind on projects we get matching grants from. Something too that may be worth discussing is a portion of our money. Am I too close to this thing? All right, a portion of our matching money, or portion of the local option sales tax revenue may be well spent looking at how we can increase our retail floor space, ways to increase the sales revenue in Santa Rosa County. I'm not sure. I've heard that we've had a study, the county commission had a study done here a few years ago where it shows we're losing $200 million a year in slippage to other counties. In other words, residents of Santa Rosa County are going to other counties and spending $200 million a year. And Jane can do the math and translate that into a half-cent sales tax number. It's big, sounds like a big number to me. But I know maybe something this board to start looking at. Is it worth us looking at ways that we can see more competitive retail shopping spaces in Santa Rosa County to keep the residents of Santa Rosa County buying in Santa Rosa County as much as possible? I know with the entrance of Avalon and I-10, there's a lot of traffic that comes from and to Escambia County every day. If we had something in those traffic patterns where we could catch a lot of those retail sales, I think it'd be a huge boon to the county economically in many ways. I know my wife likes to go to Malmus about once or twice a month, and I drop her off there when I go to Bass Pro Shop. And I like to look at the tags in the parking lot there, and a bunch of them were from Florida. And I just think it's something, and let's bring it up for discussion, no action or anything, but I think it's something we may want to spend a portion of our local option sales tax money as an investment and looking at ways long-term, especially if we're going to 1 cent, that we can get more of those dollars. Okaloosa County just passed their half-cent sales tax recently, and a half cent is going to generate $18 million a year for them. $18 million. Plus you can leverage a lot of that. I mean, that's a lot of money for projects that can get done. So I think long-term looking, if we looked out there, what are some of the ways we can capture more of the business from our people who are leaving here to go? I'm sure they'd rather stay here. And anyway, just an idea, throw it out there for thoughts, and sometimes in the future we look at it.
Thank you. Back when we were out on the road trying to get this half penny passed the first time, of course, we didn't have any real experience with it yet, but there was a good bit of interest with respect to the leveraging aspect that we've already talked about. So in the event that this does, and I know I'm probably stating the obvious, in the event this does start taking shape, having those numbers pretty available to everybody to be able to use would be very helpful. I mean, it's the numbers I recall were, I don't know, 4 to 1 or something like that in the leveraging average. And, at the time, we didn't know that we could even do better than 1-1 on a match. But anyhow, like I said, if we need to have those figures in the event that some of us get involved with it again and it gets put on the ballot to try to push it out there.
Yeah, we'll have those, and you'll see in the FY20 list, there's, I think, $800,000 for the Metron Estates drainage project. That's an HMGP grant application that's been submitted, and that's to provide construction match, and that would be 25% match, so 3 times that would be coming back in federal funding to do the construction of that project that's completing design now.
Well, and when you consider that, and depends on who you talk to, how much the residents actually put in, 75% of every dollar, then it gets even better. So anyhow, something to think about.
I had a question for Jane. How's the bed tax rate set? Is that set by statute or?
Yes, and we have some leeway here. We've taken it as far out as we can, except we could levy an additional penny, but there's some restrictions with that one.
So we do potentially have the opportunity to create additional revenue through bed tax?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, the tourism development tax limits are set in Florida statute, but they're enacted by the Board of County Commissioners.
And that would be the 6th then, is that right? Okay. And there's a good bit of restrictions on that. Yes. All right. Have you got anything else, Dan?
I do not have anything else, and I'll answer any questions that you may have regarding the local option sales tax, or kind of where we are, where we're going.
Is it actually going to, are there discussions being made now as putting it on a ballot, or?
I think it's been talked about. I don't know that I would go so far as discussions yet. I think it came up at the Benny Russell Park Master Site Plan public meeting. Both Commissioner Salter and Commissioner Parker spoke about the half-cent sales tax and the good that's been accomplished with the current half-cent, and to do things that we're talking about, like a YMCA at the Benny Russell Park would require an additional half-cent sales tax. So I don't know that, we haven't had a board discussion or an agenda item on it, but it's been talked about in various forums, I think, over the last 3 to 6 months.
It's been talked about on the street, I know.
I just had a quick question about, in comparing the quarterly update with the last page, the loss planning and programming. I apologize, I wasn't able to attend the last meeting, and I tried to watch it, but missed my opportunity before coming today. It says in the quarterly report that and that's that we had the 200,000 per district is given for and then you're working with, each district to give that. But then here it has on the last page that it's field space expansion. What's is there a change are we doing the field space expansion, or is it a district per district?
We didn't allocate in this current fiscal year we're executing now additional money to the district commissioners with the recreation dollars. There's the key need, I think, that I've heard consistently, we've talked about here, we've floated a couple of different ideas, is to expand the field space in the county. Last time we met, we talked about an opportunity potentially at the Moores to do some sort of soccer complex there. That met with lukewarm response. But it's still on the table, I would say. The other thing that I think we talked about then was potential agreement with Pensacola State College in Midway for some land there at that facility that could be used to expand field space in that area of the county that would be available to both Tiger Point and Navarre potentially, or to some of our travel soccer teams perhaps, or maybe specifically for lacrosse, I don't know. But so the intention there is that money is just set aside to address that need when we get a project together. I don't know what that project looks like. I think the Pensacola State College Midway field will probably move ahead of the other one, and we're looking to sign an agreement with Pensacola State College that involves land at our industrial park for a truck driving school and a lineman school that they have a state grant for, and a reciprocal agreement that they would provide land at their Midway campus to allow us to expand fields there.
Okay, so instead of giving as before, it's kind of just a general as projects come up. Great.
Yes.
All right, thank you for the clarification.
If nobody else has a question, Dan, last time we discussed potentially looking at some property at the Moors with regard to soccer fields. Has that discussion taken any further shape, or where is that?
It has not. I'm still in touch with the developer, the landowner there. There are other folks also interested in the parcel, but the board was not. There wasn't really consensus to pursue that, so I think it's still there as an option, but I think the primary direction we're headed now is probably that Pensacola State College site first, and then perhaps that, which would be maybe some combination of sales tax and tourism development tax funding if it's a travel, tournament type facility.
Okay, thank you. And my last question, and you may not, because y'all hadn't really started talking about this additional half penny, but the statutes provide for some of that money can be used for economic development. What's your thoughts on that? Is that, because the last time we didn't really include that as part of our discussions, but going forward, do you think that would be a part of, I think Escambia County uses 15% of theirs for economic development activities. Has any discussion ever been had about that?
I wouldn't say there's been any discussion. I like the idea. I think there's a lot of potential projects that our economic development office is pursuing right now that funding would facilitate. It could also be used to leverage Triumph applications in the future. So there's some potential there. And now with the approved economic development strategic plan that was completed last year, I think that provides some of that strategic direction in economic development that we can put dollars against.
Okay, thank you.
On that point, and to piggyback on what Edwin was saying earlier, do you think, I hate to volunteer him, but maybe at our next meeting, Shannon could come and enlighten us a little bit?
I love volunteering, Shannon, so
Okay.
yeah.
I mean, he may be able to clue us in on how he sees these dollars having an impact in his world.
Yeah, I think we can certainly include that. I think that's a good point that is especially relevant if we start talking about an additional half cent, that would be another factor that wasn't a big one last time, but
Right.
one that would be beneficial.
Yeah.
When we have that discussion, include in there the opportunity for matching grants. I understand there's quite a bit of activity with matching grants for economic development. Give us an idea what potential is there when we talk about it.
Yeah, we'll do that. I mean, there's the Governor's Job Growth Grant Fund. It's been $85 million each of the last 2 years. Triumph money, which is $1.5 billion, spread out over the next 15 years. So there are opportunities there that you could certainly leverage.
All right. Is there anything else?
Nope, thanks everybody for coming, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll look to schedule in January probably, I think, for next time, and we'll look to get a quorum then.
All right. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you all for coming.